Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Welcome to this morning's Srimad Bhagavatam class. It's from Canto 2, Chapter 6, and Text 35. This morning, we were fortunate to have Her Grace Vrindavanesvari Radhika Mataji from ISKCON, Philadelphia, to give the class. Hare Krishna, Mataji. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. I know Mataji is on. Just wait a little bit until she should get on in a few minutes, if not less. But she's definitely joined. So we'll give her a little time to come on video, and then we'll start the class. Hare Krishna. Okay, she sent me a text message on what she's doing now. It has to do with her family. She'll be joining in a few minutes. So I'm going to go back and play some more.
Okay, here I am. Hare Krishna,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Hare Krishna, no problem.
Yeah, sorry about that.
It's all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Jai.
Please accept mine. All glories to Prabhupada. My
Okay.
my father just called me, so I was just making sure he was okay.
Okay,
So
good.
yeah, so we'll get started.
Hare
Jaya
Krishna.
Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Giravardhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jai Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Giravardhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tila Vanachari Jai Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giravardhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Āsthāya Sata His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Jai.
Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Āsthāya Sata His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Jai.
Anatakota Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai.
Jai.
Namachari Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai.
Jai.
Prem Sigaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadara Shiva Sati Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki
Jai.
Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakan Radhakan Giravardhan Govardhan Ki Jai.
Jai.
Mayapurdam Ki Jai.
Jai.
Vrindavandam Ki Jai.
Jai.
Jamuna Devi Ki Jai.
Jai.
Ganga Devi Ki Jai.
Jai.
Tulsi Devi Ki Jai.
Jai.
ISKCON Harrisburg Ki Jai.
Jai.
Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai.
Jai.
Gaur Premanande.
Hari Hari Bo.
All glories these assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories these assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories these assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Hari Hari Bol. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pratarane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashita Deshatarane. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Narayana Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottama Devam Saraswatim Vyasyam Jato Jayamatiryat Nasta Prayashu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloki Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. So good morning, devotees. Sorry for a little delay this morning. Hope you're having a nice week so far. We're reading this week today from second canto, the 6th chapter, and we're reading from the 35th verse, and the chapter is Pruksha Sukta confirmed. So I'll read the Sanskrit 3 times, and then we can take turns repeating. So samāmnāyamayas prajāpatīnām abhivanditaḥ āsthāya yogaṁ nipuṇaṁ samāhitas nādhyagacchaṁ yata ātma-sambhavaḥ. So samāmnāyamayas tapomayaḥ prajāpatīnām abhivanditaḥ āsthāya yogaṁ nipuṇaṁ samāhitas nādhyagacchaṁ yata ātma-sambhavaḥ. So samāmnāyamayas tapomayaḥ prajāpatīnām abhivanditaḥ āsthāya yogaṁ nipuṇaṁ samāhitas nādhyagacchaṁ yata ātma-sambhavaḥ. Okay, someone else like to try?
Samāmnāyam. So samāmnāyamayas tapomayaḥ prajāpatīnām abhivanditaḥ āsthāya yogaṁ nipuṇaṁ samāhitas nādhyagacchaṁ yata ātma-sambhavaḥ.
Hare Krishna. Would someone else like to chant? Today's tricky. Anyone else like to give it a shot? Good practice.
Soham samāmnāyamayas tapomayaḥ prajāpatīnām abhivanditaḥ āsthāya yogaṁ nipuṇaṁ samāhitas tam nādhyagacchaṁ yata ātma-sambhavaḥ. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Anyone else like to try? No? Okay, we'll do word for word synonyms. Sa aham, myself, the great Brahma. Samānāyamayas, in the chain of disciplic succession of Vedic wisdom. Tapomayaḥ, successfully having undergone all austerities. Prajāpatīnām, of all the forefathers of living entities. Abhivanditaḥ, worshipable. Patiḥ, master. Āsthāya, successfully practiced. Yogaṁ, mystic powers. Nipuṇaṁ, very expert. Samāhitas, self-realized. The Supreme Lord. Did not. Nādhyagacchaṁ, properly understood. Yata, from whom. Atma, self. Sambhava, generated. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Although I am known as the great Brahma, perfect in the disciplic succession of Vedic wisdom, and although I have undergone all austerities and am expert in mystic powers and self-realization, and although I am recognized as such by the great forefathers of the living entities who offer me respectful obeisances, still I cannot understand Him, the Lord, the very source of my birth. Report. Brahma, the greatest of all living creatures within the universe, is admitting his failure to know the Supreme Lord despite his vast learning in the Vedic wisdom, despite his austerity, penance, mystic powers, and self-realization, and despite being worshipped by the great Prajāpatīs, the forefathers of the living entities. So these qualifications are not sufficient to know the Supreme Lord. Brahmaji could understand the Lord to a little extent only when he was trying to serve him by the eagerness of his heart, which is the devotional service mood. Therefore, the Lord can be known only by the sincere mood of eagerness for service and not by the amount of material qualification as scientist or speculative philosopher, or by attainment of mystic powers. This fact is clearly corroborated in Bhagavad Gita 18:54 through 55. Brahma bhuta prashannatma nasochati na kanchati sama sarveshu bhuteshu mad bhaktim labhate param bhaktyamama bijannati yavam chasmi tatvata tatumam tatvato yatna vishyate tad ananvataram. Only self-realized by attainment of the above high qualifications of Vedic wisdom, austerity, etc., can help one on the devotional path. But failing in devotional service, one remains still imperfect, because even in that position of self-realization, one cannot factually know the Supreme Lord. By self-realization, one is qualified to become a devotee, and the devotee, by service mood, bhaktiya, only can gradually know the personality of Godhead. One should not, however, misunderstand the import of vishyate enters into, as referred to merging into the existence of the Supreme. Even in material existence, one is merged in the existence of the Lord. No materialist can disentangle self from matter, but the self is merged in the eternal energy of the Lord. As no layman can separate butter from milk, no one can extricate the merged self from the matter by acquiring some material qualification. This vishyati, by devotion, bhaktias, means that to be able to participate in the association of the Lord in person. Bhakti, or devotional service to the Lord, means to become free from material entanglement and then to enter into the kingdom of God, becoming like Him, one like Him. Losing one individuality is not the aim of bhakti yoga or of the devotees of the Lord. There are 5 types of liberation, one of which is called sayujya mukti, or being merged into the existence or body of the Lord. The other forms of liberation mainly maintain the individuality of the particle soul and involve being always engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. The word vishyati, used in the verses of the Bhagavad Gita, is thus meant for the devotees who are not at all anxious for any kind of liberation. The devotees are satisfied simply in being engaged in the service of the Lord, regardless of the situation. Lord Brahma is the first living being who directly learned the Vedic wisdom from the Lord. Tene Brahma hirdaya adi kavaye. Therefore, who can be more learned Vedantist than Lord Brahma? He admits that in spite of his perfect knowledge in the Vedas, he was unable to know the glories of the Lord. Since no one can be more than Lord Brahma, how can the so-called Vedantas be perfectly cognizant of the absolute truth? The so-called Vedantas therefore cannot enter into the existence of the Lord without being trained in the matter of Bhakti Vedanta, or Vedanta plus Bhakti. Vedanta means self-realization, and Bhakti means realization of the personality of Godhead to some extent. No one can know the personality of Godhead in full, but at least to a certain extent, one can know the absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, by self-surrender and a devotional attitude, and by nothing else. In the Brahma Samhita also it is said, Vedeshu Durlabham, or simply by study of Vedanta, one can hardly find out the existence of the personality of Godhead, but the Lord is Adurlabham, ātma-sambhavaḥ, very easily available to his devotee. Srila Vyasadeva therefore was not satisfied simply with compiling the Vedanta Sutras, but over and above this, by the advice of his spiritual master Narada, he compiled the Srimad Bhagavatam in order to understand the real import of Vedanta. Srimad Bhagavatam, therefore, is the absolute medium by which to understand the absolute truth. Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tashme Shri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadavmayam Daradis Vadvatam. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadara Shri Sati Gaur Bhaktivinoda Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Swaminiti Namane Snekta Supanita Padmanatra Sapujam Prabhupada Gata Pranam Bhakti Charapadam. So I will read the translation again, and then we'll kind of dive into. There's a lot in this purport today, so there's definitely a lot to cover. The translation is, although I am known as the great Brahma, perfect in the disciplic succession of Vedic wisdom, And although I have undergone all austerities and am an expert in mystic powers and self-realization, and although I am recognized as such by the great forefathers of the living entities who offer me respectful obeisances, still I cannot understand him, the Lord, the very source of my birth. So this is a really really powerful understanding, I guess you could say, because we see Lord Brahma. He is, the master of this universe. There are many different Lord Brahmas in different universes. Lord Brahma of this universe he's a creative power, but he's still not the ultimate creator. He is a creator under Lord Krishna, under Vishnu. And so even in this, all the mystic powers he's been given, the creative abilities that he's been given, still his knowledge of the Supreme Lord is limited. It's limited because he is not the Lord. Only the Lord is the Lord. Only the Lord has all abilities, all capacities for understanding, all knowledge. So even Lord Brahma, who is almost the highest in the ranking, you could say, of creation, he is almost the highest. He is not, in fact, the highest. So we have to take to the understanding that with and I'm going to pull up the verse that Prabhupada brought here, the Brahma Bhuta Prashanatma Nasochina Kinshati. So this the translation of this verse is, one who is thus transcendentally situated at once realizes the Supreme Brahman and becomes fully joyful. He never laments or desires to have anything. He's equally disposed toward every living entity. In that state, he attains pure devotional service. So Prabhupada's giving this quote here in helping us to understand the qualifications of someone that can come to know Lord Krishna. But even still, through these qualifications, through this understanding of realizing Supreme Brahman and becoming joyful, being equally disposed toward every living entity, being in that pure devotional service, only then can he come to the Lord. But still, that perfect knowledge is no one can attain that, not even Lord Brahma. And so we know Lord Brahma to be, we know in the Brahma Samhita, this Brahma Samhita was written by Lord Brahma to glorify the Lord. And the Brahma Samhita is a very beautiful piece, and we only have recovered a small fraction of it. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur translated this for our benefit, but this is such a small sliver. It's only, I believe, it's the 5th chapter in a very long scripture, and so the Brahma Samhita, like I said, it's a glorification, and the very first verse in Brahma Samhita that we have at our disposal establishes the supremacy of the absolute truth. And this is something that's very important to establish this supremacy of the absolute truth. Here, it's the invocation that we see as the invocation. Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachinandana Vigraha Anandir Adi Govindam Sarve Karana Karanam. So Krishna is known as Govinda, is the supreme Godhead. He has an eternal blissful spiritual body. He is the origin of all. He has no other origin, and he is the supreme cause of all causes. So Lord Brahma is right out of the gate with this verse in this section, is establishing Krishna as the all, as the all-knowing, the supreme, the eternally blissful spiritual body. So here he's putting himself immediately below Krishna in that statement, in that hymn. And so here in Brahma Samhita, we see that it continues on in helping to glorify and to enumerate the different qualities of Krishna as the all-attractive. So we can, as Prabhupada helps us understand, if Lord Brahma can't even have the fullest understanding of the Lord, what's to say of our understanding? The Vedantists out there may claim that they have perfect realization, but they can't possibly, because they're still human. They are still suffering from the same defects that humans, that the jivas possess. We've limited intelligence. We forget things. We are, tend to lie. So all of these things are limiting even the Vedantists from fully knowing the Lord. So what is prescribed here is the path of self-realization is through bhakti, the service mood, bhaktya. And this is by self-realization, it says in the purport, one is qualified to become a devotee, and the devotee by service mood only can gradually know the personality of Godhead. It's gradually know the personality of Godhead. And so, and I like that in this purport, Prabhupada gives a very good understanding of the concept of merging. And this is something that other spiritual paths discuss, is this merging, becoming one with the universal energies, merging with the Lord, merging with the universal energies. That is one path, mukti. This is the path of the impersonalists. This is the path of the yogis. Patanjali in Bhagavad Gita, the Patanjali yoga system. This is the ultimate goal, the nirvana, the mukti, the merging. But this is not the recommended path, because the merging is losing one's own identification. And that does not put us in that relationship with the Lord. So, but in this sense of merging, here, Prabhupada is really nicely explaining that the reference to merging is actually taken in completely in the wrong context, because we are part and parcel of the Lord. Our energies are already merged in that sense of being being an extension of the Lord, being a part and parcel of the Lord. And because we have Paramatma, because we have the soul and the super soul, those are both energies of the Lord. The super soul is literally an extension of the Lord in our hearts. And the soul is eternal. And if it's eternal, it must be also an energy of the Lord. So by this concept of thinking of merging the self, we are not merging in the sense of losing our individuality, because that is death to a devotee. Devotees do not want to lose our individuality, because then how can we continue to serve without the individual soul, without the individual characteristics and qualities? We can no longer serve if we're completely merged. We've become undiscernible in the spiritual energies, and that service mentality dissipates. It goes away, and then we would just have to come back again eventually, and come into some material body. It might be a heavenly body, like a heavenly planet, but we still have to come. But even the heavenly planets are material. Even in the higher planets are still material until you're actually at the Krishna Loka, the Goloka Vrindavan. So even all of those places, they still have to come back eventually. It may take millions of years for them to come back into that cycle of birth and death, but they still have to eventually to be able to go up to Goloka Vrindavan, to go to Godhead. And that's the understanding that we derive from Srimad Bhagavatam. And we know that this was written as the nectar. This is the nectar, the most precious of all the shastras, because it is not only giving us understanding of the Lord, but it's giving us understanding of how to be a perfect devotee, or close to perfect devotee. It's also giving us those role models, and also teaching us about bhakti. And so you don't hear about in the Bhagavatam, you're not reading about souls just merging and dissipating and losing all of their identity. you may hear the demons, and this is actually something that's come up, and I've asked this of senior devotees, and sometimes you hear when Krishna kills a demon, it'll say, oh, Krishna killed, I don't know if it was related exactly to this, I'm just using this example. Krishna killed Putana, and Putana merged back into the body of Krishna. And I've often in class raised my hand, well, I thought merging wasn't part of the whole process. And it was explained very nicely to me that it was that their energy went back to Krishna. But they still didn't lose that individuality, because we know that so many of the demons then had the opportunity to serve Krishna directly or to come back as devotees and serve in that way as well. So when that's referenced in Shastra that the demon was killed and then was merged into the body of Krishna, they still weren't losing their identity. And that is a boon. The fact that Krishna was absorbing them that's a boon to them. That's the highest possible benediction that could be given to these demons. And we know that these demons are oftentimes playing out roles anyway. So that they're sometimes they're demons, sometimes they're devotees, and this is all kind of just acting out in these different roles to carry out these pastimes for the Lord. But anyway, you might come across that in the Shastra, and certainly if you are reading it or if you're in class and you say, wait, a demon they were merged into the body of Krishna, raise your hand and ask, because it's good to get explanation in that class about what that means. But here, like I said, Prabhupada is being very clear. No materialist can disentangle self from matter, for the self is merged in the external energy of the Lord. And so this is, again, understanding that because we can't be ever detached, no matter how hard we may try, we can turn our back to Krishna. We can be completely engaged and absorbed in material energies. We could even be doing demoniac activities. But still, because we have the soul, super soul within us, we are forever attached. And those energies are together. It's just the consciousness, the covering makes us seem like we are not connected. But yet the energies of the soul, super soul are merged. They're part of the same whole. Therefore, they're merged. So I love this example Prabhupada gives. No layman can separate butter from milk. You can't just pull them apart, right? You have to go through a process, but no one can extricate the emerged self from matter by acquiring some material qualification. And so, again, Prabhupada is really diving into this as reminding us that in order for us, because we don't want to lose our identity. We don't want to just merge with the energies of the Lord and become one, because that's not our nature. If the soul is eternal, the soul is individual. So how can and the soul can never be burned or destroyed or cut. If that's the case about the soul, then how can it just dissipate and become one? So it kind of doesn't make sense when you think about the qualities of the soul, the individuality of each soul. Then you think about the concept of merging, it seems quite impossible. It's not. The soul is by nature separate. By nature, the soul is individual, and because it can't be destroyed, that would mean it can't just evaporate either, and just lose its identity. And so these are all really important things, because we will get in conversations invariably. There are so many different spiritual paths out there, and a lot of them are very impersonal. So not that we are going out there trying to debate or knock someone down and say, you're wrong, this is this, but it's to help ourselves so that we don't become confused. Because it can be very easy for us, especially when we're just getting into this and we're just starting to navigate this path. It can become very easy for someone that is very versed in their own more impersonalist path. If they're very well versed in that, very solid in their foundation with their path, And they can be, you can be speaking to them and be like, wait a minute, now I'm confused. So it's really important to understand some of these different points so that we ourselves can maintain our own solidity and develop ourselves in our chosen path of bhakti yoga. Because as someone that stepped onto this path, we want to have that relationship with the Lord. We've made that decision, or else we wouldn't be here. Bhakti yoga is 100% cultivating a relationship with the Lord. There's no other reason to be here. That is it. That is bhakti yoga. We are here to serve the Lord and cultivate that relationship through that service. So like, Prabhupada said, there is the one form that you can merge into the existence or the body of the Lord. But the form that we want to practice is really just being engaged, always engaged in that transcendental loving service of the Lord. And so Prabhupada says devotees are not anxious for liberation, because that doesn't mean anything unless we're actually serving, unless we're serving the Lord. So getting back to Brahma, Lord Brahma, he is here. He is glorifying the Lord, sharing his own shortcomings in this way. And so I wanted to take it back to there was a lecture that Prabhupada gave on the Brahma Samhita, and the devotees were chanting Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami, and Prabhupada went into this a little bit. And so I wanted to read a little bit of this lecture to you, because I think it helps us to also understand Lord Brahma, and how he was also discussing Krishna, in addition to how he's discussing Krishna here in this verse. So Prabhupada says, thank you. So Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami. These verses, Brahma Samhita, it was composed by Lord Brahma. Therefore, in the Vedic literature, this is called Samhita. Samhita means part of the Vedic literature. So Lord Brahma is describing about Krishna. There are some foolish questions that Krishna appeared 5,000 years ago, how he became God. Actually, that is not the fact. In the Brahma Samhita, Brahma is describing means from the very creation. Brahma is the first creature of this universe. So he has explained about Krishna by his experience, by his realization. In the Vedanta Sutra, Krishna is described Janmati Asya Yata, the supreme person from whom everything has emanated. So that Krishna has confirmed in his Bhagavad Gita, Aham Adir Hi Devanam. Devanam means in the beginning there was Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshvara. And Krishna is Adi of these devas also. Aham Adir Hi Devanam. Aham Sarvasya Prabhavo. Everything has emanated from me. So Krishna is the Adi Purusha. Adi is the supreme. In Arjuna also confirms, after understanding Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna confirms Param Brahma Param Dhamma Pavitram Param Bhava Purusham Sattvatam Adyam. Adyam is the original person. Just like in our genealogical table, in each family, there is a person who is the origin of the family. And I want to stop here for a minute. So if we know that Krishna is the original progenitor, he is the original creator, and Brahma was the first of the created, we can only know as the child to our parents, to give that as an example. We can only know our parents based on how we have a relationship with them now and what they tell about themselves from before we were born, or from when we were small children and couldn't remember. So and maybe from talking to other people who knew our parents, but how can we truly, fully know every little thing about our parents? And for those of us whose parents are still around and we have the opportunity, every once in a while, one of my parents will surprise me with something I didn't know. And I thought I knew everything, right? But I don't even know my own material parents. How could I possibly know Krishna? And Krishna is Lord Brahma's parent. So it is that same relationship. And Lord Brahma received, because he was the first creator, he received all of that from the Lord, all of that knowledge. And still yet, he could only describe Krishna based on his own realization, as Prabhupada said here. It's from his own experience and by his realization. And that's really what today's verse is talking about, is that, you know, the absolute truth is there, and it's available to us through the understanding of the Lord. And Prabhupada says here that since no one can be more than Lord Brahma, how can the so-called Vedantas be perfectly cognizant of the absolute truth? So we can't try to even put ourselves above Lord Brahma and say we know everything, we know it all. And Prabhupada says here, the so-called Vedantas therefore cannot enter into the existence of the Lord without being trained in the matter of Bhakti Vedanta, or Vedanta plus Bhakti. And so this process of Bhakti Yoga is, and the understanding of absolute truth. I gave a class on Saturday. We were talking about the preface of the Bhagavatam, and Prabhupada was talking about how the Bhagavatam is there to help us understand who we are and who is the Lord, and what is our relationship between us and the Lord, and how do we serve the Lord, and how we become Krishna conscious, how do we realize that through that. And at the end of this preface, he signed it Om Tat Om Tat Sat Om Tat Tat. So he signed it very carefully to, and that is the absolute truth. Absolute truth. Om Tat Sat is absolute truth. And he signed that because he is bringing this absolute truth to us. This is in the form of Bhagavatam. We are receiving absolute truth for us to try and internalize, to help us, to bring us closer to the Lord, and to help us understand our relationship in regards to material energies, to understand our relationship with regards to how we can know Krishna more. And we know Krishna in Bhagavatam through these different relationships. And that's the one thing that's beautiful about Bhagavatam, is that these relationships are described, and as I mentioned earlier, these they can become role models for us. Lord Brahma is the ultimate role model, right? But he's Lord Brahma, he's the creator. So we have to look to, King Parikshit, and we can look to Prahlad Maharaj, and we can look to Maharaj Ambarish, and so many others that are share these pastimes in the Bhagavatam. They are helping us to see how they have come to God realization, to Krishna consciousness, how they serve the Lord, how they teach others, like with Prahlad Maharaj as an example. He was just a young boy in amongst a demon community, a demon family. And he was against all odds, literally against all odds. But he took what he received in the womb, he took this knowledge, and he then was teaching it to others. So this is the importance of reading Bhagavatam, because we can get these understandings. Now, intellectual understanding is different from actually having realization. I was talking to a friend. She's someone that isn't on any spiritual path, but she said she's very attracted to reading about spirituality, but she said she can't get past the kind of intellectual side of it. She's like, I read these things, I like it, I'm attracted to reading about, spirituality and the self. She's like, but I can't get myself deeper. There's a block. I just can't get myself deeper. And so we started talking a little bit, and I said to her, I said, it's one thing to read words on a page and say, okay, I intellectually know that. So we can read Bhagavatam, we can read Bhagavad Gita, we can read all of these different shastra, and intellectually we can say, yeah, of course, I know that. But it only comes through realization. So we have to digest it. It's actually a digestive process. We have to take what we read and not just go again and go off and like, okay, check that box. I read that. I remember it. I memorized it, and go on with our life. It's about taking smaller chunks thinking about them a little bit, praying and meditating, walking in the woods, chanting some rounds, letting it just kind of seep into us. You know, we can treat ourselves like sponges, and the water coming over us, we're absorbing it. We want to take this knowledge and not just read it and memorize it. We want to absorb it and let it really seep into our being so that we have realization. And it's through that realization that we really can understand the Lord. Prabhupada says it right here in this verse. Vedanta means self-realization, and bhakti means realization of the personality of Godhead. What is realization? Realization is not spouting off Shastra. Realization is taking Shastra, digesting it, internalizing it, and coming to this understanding, a deeply rooted, deeply seated understanding of our relationship with the Lord. So I'm going to stop here. It's 8:45. I'm going to open it up for any questions, comments, corrections, reflections, realizations that anyone might have.
Thank you very much, Mataji. Very nice lecture, in-depth lecture, and the references really help to coalesce everything together very nicely. Thank you very much. Dear devotees, this is the time to unmute yourself if you want to share some realizations from the lecture, some takeaways that you want to repeat that was fascinating to you or very helpful to you, or any questions that you want to ask. This is the time to unmute yourself and do that. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Looks like Shane's putting something in the chat. Shane Prabhu, did you have a question? You can unmute.
Yeah, maybe he may.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Sorry, I accidentally hit enter. I actually have to leave. I have to leave for an interview, but thank you for this wonderful class. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you. Good luck with your interview.
Hare Krishna. Anyone else that would like to share or ask a question about this? So whatever strikes you as very significant, you can also share it with the devotees. It's quiet today.
Quiet today. That's all right. The time change has
Well, actually, you went through a lot of things in depth. Quite a few things in depth. So that was very, very helpful. Especially the whole thing about the individuality, the merging, and you talked about the demons sometimes when they leave the body, killed by Krishna, then they merge into him. So there was merging in the text itself. Vishate, that Sanskrit word, was brought up, merging into when devotees. I was actually thinking about it. Prabhupada made the distinction that merging does not mean that type of merger that people go to the Brahma Jyoti, to merge. Absolutely. So I was thinking that merging means that we are consumed by bhakti.
Yes.
We're literally consumed by bhakti. And so our whole being is about devotion and service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So devotees merge into bhakti.
Yeah, I love that. That's a
non-devotees merge into their fountains, but devotees merge in the whole life is about bhakti. Yeah.
Oh,
that's how it hit me.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way. And that's so important, because if we see that our individuality as spirit souls, in that individuality, if we use it properly, we use that individual consciousness in the service of the Lord, then we're using it properly. We have the proper understanding, according to Prabhupada, that with that proper understanding of serving the Lord, devoting our lives to serving the Lord in bhakti, serving the devotees, that's the true path. And that's where we want to really put our spiritual energies in that direction. We still have, we navigate the material energies and keep ourselves clothed and fed and all of those things. But in terms of our spiritual energies, we want to put the energy going in the direction that's going to give us the most benefit for our spiritual lives. Bhakti yoga.
I was also thinking that this to be merged in bhakti, to be consumed by bhakti, if someone else, another devotee, is also merged in bhakti, bhakti is the priority in their lives, then naturally the sangha, the association is there. Yeah, like that. We can associate because it's like-minded people all thinking that bhakti is most important. Therefore, they can relate easily then. Yeah. So that also helps out the sangha. Yeah.
Yeah, this is why having a community is so important. And what's why Prabhupada wanted to set up the temples. I mean, and preaching centers and have bhakti vrikshas and all of this is for the benefit of each of the devotees. Because when we are on an island, it can become very precarious and also very difficult to navigate the devotional energies and the spiritual energies. So having Prabhupada wanted to set these centers up mostly for us to have the benefit of congregation and association, and that's really the primary focus in this yuga is yes, there's deity worship and all those things, but the main reason was for us to come together as a community so that we could study together and worship together and eat together and have that community um, and not be in islands unto ourselves. So
because there's no island in the spiritual world. They're all community based. Everything is based on community based. Thanks for explaining. Any other questions? Anybody want to ask a question or share in this conversation?
The quiet day. Everyone's recovering from daylight savings time.
Yeah,
I know I am.
That too, yeah. Hare Krishna. If not, though, then we thank you very much, Vrindavanesvari Mataji, for a very nice class. Your classes are very relaxing. It's almost therapeutic. It's like
That's good. I'm glad they're relaxing.
Hare Krishna. So, all right, everybody have a nice, wonderful Krishna conscious day. And of course, take the Sangha and your chanting very seriously. That's important for all of us. Jai. Again, thank you. Vancha kalpatarubhasya kripa sindhubi evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.
Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Jai.
Bye. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Go to the Prabhupada.